again, back with another Paintmarine's bookshelf. Today I'm going to be going over the new Dark Imperium by Guy Haley. Quick, disclaimer, if you will. There potentially be, not potentially, there will be spoilers as I'm going to kind of go into a few things. I'll do my best to keep it out, but as always, I won't go like super in depth. So it'll still be beneficial to read the book for yourself. So we'll go into that. So first thing up front I want to say is you may want to have maybe some sort of hand sanitizer or just sanitizer in general, something with high, like this kills 99.99% of illness causing germs. If you're a local doctor, someone can write you a prescription for some antibiotics or something. Maybe have some like those wet wipe, cleansing wipes, anything to disinfect. Just because like, man, the Death Guard, Nurgle, all that in here. Really, if you're a hypochondriac, don't read this book. It really, they're pretty nasty. Good book. But I'll say the one complaint I guess I kind of had with the book, and I haven't read, like I said, I haven't read too many books yet, and the only other book that I've read so far by Guy Haley was the Lehman Russ Primarch book, and it didn't seem like this isn't his writing style. I can't say necessarily because that's the only other book, and it definitely didn't have this. But anyway, what I'm getting at is my only complaint is it seemed to be when he was describing things regarding like the Death Guard, the Nurgle, all like the plague, whatever. It seemed to get kind of redundant. Like he would describe something as all this grotesque, whatever, and then he would there'd be like some conversating or some events would happen, and then he'd go back into describing it again, and it just seemed like, okay, I get it, it's disgusting. So I don't know, maybe it was just my kind of annoyance with that, and maybe it really isn't. But it just seemed like any time there was any kind of Death Guard or plague or anything, the redundancies on describing the grotesque, it just kind of seemed to be just. I mean, he was really driving that point home, like that they're gross. But yeah, I think like aside from the initial like description, and then when he gets into the scene or the situation, like you didn't really need to like then revisit it at the end of whatever happened. Like I get it, like each time you come back, you can set the mood, set the scene again, if you will. But yeah, like, I don't know. It just, that was like my only biggest kind of thing, and it only, like I said, it only really happened or occurred when it was anything to do with like the Nurgle, plague, Death Guard stuff. Like anything with Imperium, Space Marines, like it wasn't really there. Like, I mean, he would describe it, of course, but it wasn't like this redundant thing. Like, yeah. But anyway, so jumping into kind of the meat and potatoes of it, I kind of wish, like, I almost wish this was in the Dark Imperium box set instead of that big rule book. While that big rule book is great, they should throw this in there with that little card of 4-page rules and make this almost like a required reading for 8th edition. It just goes so nicely in depth. I know a lot of people were reading this before because it came out, I think it was released at the same time or shortly after the new box set in the 8th edition released. So, a lot of people were reading and they're like, oh, there's this thing in the books called aggressors, and there's these reavers, and this is, so everyone's like kind of speculating, oh, will we see this, will we see that, and so like it was kind of nice for kind of like insight into what potential models we might see. One thing that was in there that obviously didn't translate over to the rules, and unless something's changed, maybe by the time this, depending upon when you watch this video, but the aggressors in there were described as having the frag storm launchers and the flamers, and as far as I know, I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that like right now the only way you can kit them out is the bolt storm gauntlets and the frags, or the flamers, and you don't get the frag as well, which is unfortunate because that would be pretty sweet. Because Because right now the aggressors with just the flame, I think they're called flame storm as well. Flame, maybe not. That might be the lantern. Anyway, with the flamer gauntlet things, I mean they only have that 8-inch range, and then even just having like the frag launchers would be nice to have some D6 18-inch range, even though it's strength 4 AP 0. It's still nice to have a little bit of range, so like if they can't get in range yet, they can at least do something in the meantime. Yeah, and then plus that we give them a little overwatch, because if you have somebody that like deep strikes in over 9, you can't overwatch them because you only have an 8-inch range, so kind of unfortunate with that. But yeah, so anyway, that would be like one thing I saw from the book. The other thing that a lot of people point out is the lack of flyers with the primary Space Marines, and they keep alluding to the fact that there is one flyer discussed in the book, and I'll flip over to where it was kind of described a little bit, but it's the Overlord, and they kind of described it at like that it dwarfs like a Thunderhawk, like so this thing is huge. So will we see an Overlord model even from Forge World? Maybe. I kind of, with the way they describe how huge it is, I would say I doubt it, and if we do, it's going to be, the price tag is going to be pretty high. It's going to be a lot of resin. It's going to be heavy. So it's on, I think, page 129 is when I have the first talk of the Overlord. But let's see here if that's correct. Let's see. I don't want to spend a lot of time looking here. I may have to cut part of this out and then come back in with it. All right, so back. It's actually 229, not 129. So first kind of description that we have here of the Overlord. So the Overlord shook. Its armor was massively thick and its engines prodigiously powerful. The new craft made Thunderhawks look like toys. As with so much of the Primarch had commissioned, the Overlord harkened back to the older designs of insertion craft, improved by the boundless creativity of Belisarius Call. Yeah, so that's kind of like the first. So like when I first read that, I was like thinking, okay, so like a super huge, like was it Cassius or Castilla? Well, the assault ram, that's on Forge World. So I'm thinking of like, okay, just like 2 Thunderhawk, like chassis side by side, and then like in the middle, like where the pilots go, type of a thing. So just a giant double Thunderhawk. But then later at the bottom of the page, so there were 40 of them in the craft and a further 80 in the 2 accompanying Overlords. So it sounds like they have kind of a troop capacity of 40. Doesn't really go further as like if there's other vehicles at all, really. Just talks about the troops. So there are 40 of them in the aircraft and a further 80 in the 2 accompanying Overlords. The ships were similar to the Corvus Black Stars used by the Inquisition and the Death Watch. Like the Black Stars, the Overlords possessed twin transport bays with their own assault doors, but they were bigger and even more blessed with advanced technologies. Alright, so there they kind of go a little bit more as describing them as like the Corvus Black, so a little more sleeker than like the battering ram style of the other assault ram. So I found that very interesting. I would love to see that kind of a model make it, but with the size being described as making Thunderhawks look like toys, I mean that seems like it would be huge. And I mean, like already right now, I wish like I had a Thunderhawk myself. I'm just I keep trying to save up, and then other things come out, and then I gotta get those, and so it just keeps getting pushed back and back and back, and eventually I keep telling myself one day I'll have at least a Thunderhawk, But so if they had an Overlord, I was like, if I ever saw it, it'd be like what's that giant Warlord Titan thing? Yeah. So that was neat. Another thing I gotta go over that is also it's on page 230 is kind of I don't know if it's a theory or I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's kind of a theory of mine. It's not a popular theory, and I don't necessarily I don't even necessarily know if I believe it a whole lot, even though it's kind of my theory, and it's not. It's a theory shared by others. It's definitely a minority thing. But anyway, I'll read the passage, and then we'll kind of go into like more of what I'm talking about. So, let's see here. And this is kind of so. This is talking about. There's a captain in here, Captain Felix. He's a Gravis armor wearing Primaris, and so he's kind of in his head and just kind of thinking over his own thoughts about how the Primarch's return and the introduction of the Primaris Marines, and just kind of how other Marines kind of he's kind of speculating how they might feel if if he was in their position, how he would maybe feel about like these new and improved troops kind of coming in. So Felix pondered how Calgar might feel about the Primarch's unilateral altering of the Codex Astartes. The captain could not help but feel that in his drive for victory and efficiency, Guilliman had been careless with the feelings of his existing sons. Increasingly, Guilliman looked to the Primaris Space Marines as his first solution. He made no attempt to hide the fact that the days of the older Space Marines were numbered. So that little bit of foreshadowing for Games Workshop's future. Are the old Space Marine models, in fact, numbered? I kind of have this very unpopular theory that yes, they are. A lot of people are like, well, they can't do that. They just can't. They're the bread and butter, the staple of them. It's like, yes, they are. But if you look back, while they constantly say your models will never be invalidated, you can always play them. Like, shoot, I could take a rogue trader era Space Marine and put them on the board, and as long as everybody's in agreement, it's fine. Whatever, that's perfectly fine. So yes, your army technically will not be invalidated. I don't think it'll be necessarily Age of Sigmar's or that whole from the old world to Age of Sigmar happened. But I really think the whole Gathering Storm thing was our end times for 40k, and kind of a not the end of the fluff type of a thing at all, and not wiping out races and models and replacing them with this. But it's kind of like a slow 5-year, 10-year phase out plan. Maybe I'm wrong. I would be completely fine with being wrong. But I also at the same time I would not be surprised if we don't start seeing 5 to 10. Some of those models start to kind of disappear, kind of go away. And then everybody's like, well, all these things are in the Codex now. It's like, well, yeah, in the Codex now, but that's never stopped them in the past from adding new units. First time we saw it was a while back when the Tyranids, and they did that. What was it? They had that Tyranid and Blood Angels box set, and then shortly after there's new units that came out. The rules weren't in the Tyranid Codex. They were in the White Dwarf, or they had supplements that came in with the Leviathan book. So there's no reason why they can't continue to come out with new units. So then it's but with the Primaris Space Marines, they only have a select few toys right now. But as they grow and expand that, do you want to keep bloating this already huge army that you have, or do you want to start consolidating things down? Replacing them with newer models, because again, it's a money making game. So if everybody's got every Space Marine model that they need, what's the purpose of going and buying another Predator if I've already got a Predator? Well, you know what? Now we've got the Primaris Predator. I don't know if it would be called that, but if you think, essentially the Repulsor kind of fits the Predator bill for the Primaris, as well as a transport. It's kind of an all-inclusive. It's quite the little gunboat. It's got a lot of guns and can carry troops, so it's a pretty decent little thing. Granted, it's points heavy, so there could be a more stripped down version maybe that doesn't carry troops and doesn't have nearly as many weapon options. So again, now we're looking at it's like a Predator, but it's a Primaris. Whatever. I could definitely see them doing bikes in the future for Primaris, but because they've kind of rediscovered, anti-grav technology or whatever, even though they still had the land speeders, but now we can put it on the bottom of a Land Raider chassis and call it a repulsor. I could definitely see them doing some sort of like grav bikes, kind of like the jet bikes of old, but maybe like a Primaris grav bike, which would be pretty cool. Um, but then I said, then you start like now you're just like now you've got like models on top of models. Like, why would I take bikes anymore when I can take this? And a lot of people say, well, the tactical Space Marines are great because you can take a special weapon and a heavy weapon, and Primaris you can only take all of the same thing. And I get that. I guess play style, I guess they say it's more versatile, more whatever, but I don't know. Is it really like I've started my own all Primaris homebrew chapter, and I really haven't seen that big of a deficit or difference, especially with the fact that everything can split fire. Like there's no difference than me having a squad of intercessors and a Hellblaster squad like by each other, and I can shoot at whatever I want. It's not that big of a deal. The only thing is like now instead of like having one like granted you can choose which model dies, but like if I lose that squad and I lose that one heavy weapon, it's like but then I've got like a squad of like 5 Hellblasters or whatever, and I don't know. To each their own. You could say like so far I've in the games I've played, and we call it bad dice rolling. At the end of the day, it is a dice game, but my intercessor, a 5-man intercessor up against a TAC Marine squad, has outperformed them every single time. The -1 to the AP is huge. That is huge. 30-inch range, 15-inch rapid fire is huge. That extra range of that -1 AP is a big deal. And like going up against the tactical marines with just a strength 4 AP 0, and yes, they can have one heavy weapon and a special weapon or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm going to take the 5 intercessors. But let me get off that high horse. This is about the books, not tactics. So, so maybe it's like a foreshadowing, or maybe it's just kind of like putting the bug in people's ears. We may see a phase out of maybe not all, some. I mean, they mentioned in the book, Space Marines of old can go through the Primaris process. They talk about when they take casualties, they're not replacing them with old Space Marines. Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make sense to not replace the Marines you lose with the new and improved. And that's what they talk about they're doing. So it's like he said in the book, the days of the old Marines are numbered. So while in fluff we might start to see the old phase out, new phase in, as well as our veterans that we see and our already established characters going through getting those few more organs, and I think it's only like 2 or 3 more organ difference. Get that implanted. Get whatever. I don't know. I don't know if the organs automatically make them have a growth spurt, but whatever kind of surgeries or whatever, bone grafts, bone growths, whatever, to increase their size as well. I don't know, but I feel like at least in the fluff, we'll probably see more Primaris start to phase out our everyday Marines that we know and love. And in a way, I kind of think this was Games Workshop's way of doing an end times kind of under the radar, because obviously we all love the fluff. There would have been a huge outrage, and then also always a huge outrage if like, oh, you know what, all those models and those huge armies you have, can't play with them anymore. So at the end of the day, we'll always be able to play those models. There's no doubt about that. But will we start to see some support lost for some? Yes, I think so. But agree or disagree, I don't know. At the end of the day, it's not going to be tomorrow. It probably won't even be a couple years. Like I said, I think it's like a 5 to 10 year plan. Like at 5 years, we might start to see those models start to phase out. Up to a 10-year, they're all gone. Just my 2 cents on that. So, back to the book. Another thing in the book, they definitely Rabute Guilliman has kind of his own little honor guard, but then with that he has mixed with it custodes, and the Sisters of Silence. He kind of brings them back with him, so they're kind of like part of his little entourage all the time. Now I didn't read the Gathering Storm books. I wanted to, but I could feel that change was in the air, and there's all these rumors of 8th editions. Like, I don't know if I want to... Like, I would like to get these books for the fluff, but then all the rules are going to be kind of invalidated anyway, so... I didn't get the books, but I may, if I can find them for cheap somewhere, get them just to read kind of up on them. And one thing I should have mentioned from the very beginning, the book takes place at the end of the Indominus Crusade, so it's 112 years after he comes out of stasis. 112 years. So that's why, people are like, how do we have veteran Primaris and how do we have ancients and all that? Well, they've been fighting for 112. And they even mention in the book, like when they go up against some of the Plague Marines, they're like, I've been fighting a long war for, millennia, and you've only been whatever. And there's some inexperience there, and the Primaris definitely know that. They talk about they had high casualties in the beginning, lost a lot of their Marines because of inexperience, but they're learning, like anything, and yeah. So, but with his entourage, the Sisters of Silence, they have a little interesting role. But there's I can't remember what his name, but he's like I don't know if the captain or like the lead custodian that goes along with Guilliman's entourage, and he is arrogant as beep. He's just he gets on my nerves. He's just so arrogant and just he has like these little like words that he's always like trying to get in, and Rabute's always kind of putting him in his place, and yeah, he basically is like, you guys are pretty much a disgrace. You guys haven't done anything since you failed at protecting the Emperor in the first place, and now you're guarding him on his throne and have done nothing. So he's kind of forcefully kind of pulled them out here and there and started to take them back out there, because he talks like they used to be great warriors, but they've lost their touch, essentially, which, that was kind of interesting to see just how arrogant he was. And then the Gray Shields. So that is a term used to describe the Primaris, which Guilliman kind of made into like a pseudo legion, kind of skirting the rules of his Codex Astartes that he put into place, where he doesn't really make them into a legion. He has a legion-sized army, but he breaks them into chapters, and they're a mix. And I like that he mixes them up. He doesn't have just like, okay, so here's a chapter of, Primaris from, Lehman Russ's gene seed, and here's a chapter of my, gene seed. He mixes up the squads and the chapters, which is great. And he talks about how he thinks one of the biggest problems with the heresy and why things went the way they did is there was just too much room for animosity and hate between the legions, because while they fought together, they were still separate. They weren't intermingled. So he wanted his Primaris to better understand their brothers better that way, which I thought was great. And there's a squad with the Captain Felix, and they kind of follow him around like the squad a little bit and kind of explain kind of their interaction and stuff. And then later, when he kind of gives them their new orders after he declares the Indominus Crusade done, you can kind of see like they're excited because they want to go to their chapters that their gene seed brothers, but at the same time they kind of like, they've been fighting side by side for so long, and they're the last of the Primaris to be sent out, because kind of along the way, he'll take some of them of the Gray Shields, are also known as his unnumbered sons, and kind of like reinforce a chapter here, this is a strategic point here, so you know what, here's going to be an all Primaris Space Marine chapter that needs to stay here, and all that. And so it's kind of interesting to see. And then now he's got the last few that he starts to break up and kind of give them their new orders. And one of the Space Wolves, which the Space Wolves don't have successors, or at least they didn't. Now they started a Primaris Space Wolf chapter on what was that? I want to say Rakos Drift or something. That's like the last planet that they take over next to the Great Rift that they need to fortify. So he gives the orders, and they start up a new all Primaris chapter called the Wolf Spears. And the character in it was pretty upset that he wasn't going back to Fenris, and he's pretty upset about it, but because he was excited to go back to actually be a son of Russ and be with his brothers, and then he finds out like he's not gonna go back to his ice planet. He has to go back. So that was kind of interesting, and to see that kind of mixture, and then also to see kind of there was a little bit almost, even though they're fighting together, like the Dark Angel character and the Space Wolf, they still kind of had this competition where it was like you. I think they describe it as like they want to kill each other, but they would die for each other, which was like okay, that kind of I guess in a way describes them. Yeah, so I'd say those were kind of the big talking points, really. I didn't go too much. They have like quite a few different stories. There's another one that kind of follows some Ultramarine, their Ultramar auxiliary troops, and I mean, they don't have a huge role in and out as much as to kind of be a gateway for another front, another war front in Nurgle and the Death Guard Primarch. I can't say his name right now. And how they're kind of like all coming down on Altamar and kind of trying to coax Rabuti back there. And he finally shows up, and then they have to find these different demonic devices to kind of weaken their ability to have a presence in the system. And it's kind of the back and forth of that campaign and everything. So yeah, a very good book. Like I say, I think it should be kind of a required reading, just because of how good it is, and really, yeah, I don't know. At the end of it, it was kind of, I don't know. There's just a lot of Rabute really kind of questioning the Emperor if he's a god. There's a lot of that kind of back and forth, like. He's just struggling with everybody worshiping him as the Emperor, and he's even kind of, in a way, kind of struggling with it himself, because he's like, he lied to us about the warp and all that, which he thinks is what led them susceptible to becoming tainted and tempted by the warp. And he's like, if he lied about that, then maybe he was lying that he wasn't a god. Maybe he really was a god, or maybe he didn't know he was a god and he's a god. And he just goes like this whole back and forth. Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely, if you want to, like, if you're obviously a fan of the fluff, you've probably already read it or are planning to. But I would definitely recommend it. It's a good read. Gives some great insight, is probably my favorite thing, into kind of the dynamics of the Primaris and the new, their new role in the Imperium, as well as kind of how some of the older veteran Space Marines kind of feel about them. There's kind of a love-hate kind of thing. They don't really come out and say love-hate, but there's definitely, like, while they appreciate what they are and what they can do, there's a little bit of animosity, like they're being replaced. And essentially that's what they said they are. So, yeah, definitely interesting. So, pick it up. Great read. Definitely think everyone will look forward to it. And I'm already, next up, we'll be doing Farsight, Crisis of Faith. I've got the first chapter down right now, and I'm loving it already. I'm a closet Tau fan. I just say it because I know they get a lot of hate, Tau players, and I do have a small Tau force, mostly centered around Farsight and the Farsight 7, and then the some little kind of support units here and there. But that's the big thing. I love Farsight. He's definitely my favorite character of the Tau. I'd probably say he's probably most people's favorite character of the Tau. So I'm excited to get into this book. So far, the prologue chapter was really cool. And exciting to read into it. So yeah, look forward to that being the next book. I'll probably be more than just that, because there's a few short stories on Black Library I'll probably throw in there as well, just to make it a little more beefier. And I hope you've enjoyed this little review of Dark Imperium by Guy Haley. Definitely check it out. And like I said, don't forget the hand sanitizer. All right, until next time.